so many times it's less about like words and about feeling emotionally unsafe or misunderstood. I think is the root of so much of communication fatigue. So it's really when you're stepping back and it's like you're able to actually like think about it like, okay, what was I feeling in that moment? Because a lot of the times our emotions are so high when we're feeling emotional fatigue that we don't actually know that we could be feeling judged. We could be feeling corrected. We can be feeling dismissed, unheard, or a combination of all of them. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode.
Yeah.
And this week is a good one because we're going to be talking about communication fatigue. And I know for me personally, I've really fallen into this because communication fatigue is kind of just like you're so tired of talking about the same thing over and over again.
We've had that several times in our marriage.
What it does is it creates like this either like one person really wants to dive into it and talk about it and talk about it and talk about it and talk about it until like you're just like, blue in the face, or it causes complete avoidance of that topic. And so I think that this is a common occurrence within marriage. And I believe that this is kind of the first thing that starts happening is towards like resentment and towards, not being able to repair some of the underlying things that are happening.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
A lot of the times when you're talking about communication fatigue, you're really not talking about the deep-rooted issue. You're kind of talking about the same thing over and over again, but you're not actually getting to the depth of what it really is.
Right, because the issue now is not really the thing you're having a problem with.
Never.
It's the fact that we now have to talk about it again. And do I have the energy to talk about this again? And then when you keep on doing that, not only does resentment happen, but distance can start to create because you begin to know they're going to want to talk about this. I know it because they always do, or they always want to. And it may be legitimate. Maybe there is something you need to talk about. But even on the other side, maybe there isn't. You feel like we've gone through it all. Like what more is there to communicate, which is really a highlight on how we all communicate differently, which is a whole other thing. But fatigue in communicating is a real thing. And sometimes I think we may mix up the fact that I'm tired about just talking, and we blame the issue as, why are we talking about this? But in reality, we're just tired of communicating.
Right. We're tired of going around the same cycle again, because really, I know in our situations when we've talked about like, the same issue over and over again, we have the same conversation again and again. Yeah. And the challenging part in it is that you're communicating nearly the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. It's just maybe in a different way, or you're trying to rephrase it, but you know how it felt the last conversation that you had this. So
Great
you
point.
immediately...
We're already there. We're already there how I felt now. At the end of the last conversation, I'm now feeling, or someone is now feeling that way at the beginning of the conversation.
Right.
It's just nuts.
And it can be really draining because you immediately take how you felt the previous time and assign it to now this time. So your capacity to have that conversation gets less and less because you're like, oh my gosh, here we go again. We're going to talk about the same thing. And I've even had that moment with you.
Said that statement
where I'm like, I just don't have the capacity to do this again.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. So if you've ever had that phrase come out of your mouth within the conversations, we get you.
Yeah.
And now you can label it with something, because I don't necessarily realized, and I hadn't recognized that what I was actually experiencing was communication fatigue, and that there was a thing that was happening, instead of just kind of like, oh my gosh, like I'm so irritated that we're having this conversation again. And if you can communicate again, always about communication,
Yep.
that it's like, okay, I'm really experiencing this communication fatigue. And then you can kind of break it down with some simple tools that we're going to kind of share. It helps you to be able to overcome that communication fatigue. So do you remember a time where you've had communication fatigue? Because we process things very differently. So I tend to get communication fatigue a lot quicker than you do.
Well, it's interesting because I look at this two different ways, coming from the one that wants to talk and the one that's receiving the talking. So I go back to how I felt as a result of these conversations. And so that's what rises up to me. So I'm already, I think I can assign fatigue to it. Because, I mean, there's even been a point in my marriage where...
my marriage,
yeah,
just yours.
Yeah, it's clearly... in our marriage that I've come to you, it's like, I can't fail again. I'm tired of being the failure. I'm tired of feeling like a failure. I can't do it anymore. And that's not necessarily a communication fatigue. It is a feeling fatigue of like, I can't do that part again. But I've also been the one that, brings up like heavy conversations, like when we had our church and we were pastoring. I was always wanting to talk about that, and for you, that was just I think that's some of the times where you probably felt some communication fatigue. It's like we're always talking about this.
I think you bring up an interesting point, because it can feel different if you're the one that's instigating the conversation, or you're the one that's feeling like you're the problem or you're the reason for the conversation. So I think that's a really interesting component that I hadn't necessarily really thought about in this is, if I'm coming to you telling you you've done this again and it's bothered me, or why, you're going to probably experience that communication fatigue a lot sooner and in a different way.
Yeah.
Because there's also, are you the one that's instigating the conversation? Are you avoiding the conversation? Are you pushing hard for a conversation? There's so many different types of ways that we go about a conversation that can push someone towards communication fatigue sooner, or allow there to be a longevity to the conversation.
Yeah. And I think, communication fatigue probably comes in many different ways. What do you think would you say would be indicators that maybe communication fatigue is creeping into your interactions?
I think if you're having the same conversation about an argument or about a conflict without the resolution, most of the time, that's when you're going to experience it. I think you can, if your spouse, is not making you feel as though you're being heard, I'm not feeling heard in this moment, that can create that communication fatigue, because you're going to want to keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again until you get the response that you're looking for.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
But I also think even just in our last episode, we talked a lot about the different personality types and how they deal with exhaustion. I think a lot of the times we don't recognize that there could be an external factor that's actually causing physical exhaustion that is not allowing you to show up fully and be fully yourself and present in the conflict also. And then there's also the differences with if I feel as though I maybe need space and you're pushing harder, or vice versa, there's a conflict that can arise when one person needs their space in that moment and the other person is pushing for that conversation, when it's oh my gosh, I just can't.
Yeah. And that's a hard dynamic, because if you're not aware on how each other communicates and how each other processes information, it's difficult to be on the same wavelength if you're not understanding each other. And when really maybe space is what's needed for one, and then but one also takes that as abandonment, or I mean, silence. Sometimes silence is an indicator of communication fatigue, right? Where but in some personalities, silence is what is needed to recharge for the conversation. So it's really difficult, really, if you kind of stand back. This doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your marriage. So don't confuse the realities of communication fatigue, where it's just tired of the conversation, because you can deeply love your spouse but feel completely and totally exhausted at a conversation, or the fact that you need to have a conversation. And the two aren't linked together. They're completely separate. So it is important to remember that this doesn't mean there's a problem in your marriage. This just simply means that fatigue is here, and there's ways to. I don't know that you can always avoid fatigue, because fatigue is probably a thing that can kind of come up naturally, but there are ways to walk through it, identify it, and then work together to kind of process it and maybe alleviate it a little bit.
It's interesting because I look at it as almost like a football game. Like, it's like when you're in those kind of conflicts, it's like you're kind of like, you're going one way and then maybe the other direction. And it's like sometimes you're fighting just to win the argument.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like stepping back and recognizing that the goal is more to like understand than it is to win the argument.
Yeah.
And I think also taking into consideration that it's okay for you to throw out like, hey, time out. Like, we need to pause this conversation, and we need to revisit it when we both have enough energy to show up fully for each other. So it's like, I like that football analogy, because it's like you can be like, okay, time out. Like, we're going to get back to this, but it's like, I just need a little bit of space to even gather your thoughts. I know, like, for me, I've been in conflict with you, and it's been challenging for me to even gather my thoughts, because I feel almost really confused. And I've even told you that before. I'm so sorry. I'm so confused right now. And I always want to like, in a sense, in those moments, I want to blame it on the enemy, because it's like he's the author of confusion. Yeah. And so it's like whenever I start to feel confused, that's usually when I want to take a step back, and I want to be like, okay, where am I allowing the enemy to kind of come in and cause chaos in our relationship, and where can I be rooted in faith or rooted in truth instead? And it's like, you only get there if you actually take a pause and a time out to be able to reconvene your thoughts and emotions and organize them in a thoughtful way.
And that's really good to keep in mind. Just as you were talking, I think it's interesting. I literally, in this, as you're talking, I'm processing. I've identified a trigger in me. Just in what you've said.
Oh, I'm really excited.
Well, no, because it's the confusion part. Because how I receive what you say about confusion, we've been in arguments before and had conversations, and you feel confused. And what you just described is not what I hear. What I hear is, I'm confused because you're not making any sense, and you're not on the same wavelength as me, so I'm confused. So right as you just said that, I triggered. I felt
that's sad.
I felt it like, oh, you're once again saying you're right, and I'm the idiot.
Oh my gosh!
Literally, no. I literally just
this
right
is
now.
Why we do the podcast.
Yeah, so we can
really
we can have a conversation.
Marriage therapy for us.
No, because
that's sad.
So when you say you're confused, what? Because right when you said it, I triggered. I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this can't happen on the podcast. We can't get an argument on the podcast. Like, it can't do that.
Oh, that's really funny.
But so that's interesting, because it's a critical part of understanding communication together is everything you just said about confusion and how it is absolutely 100% true. Mm-hmm. But until this moment, I never took it like that. And that is a reality for a lot of people when they're communicating. You think you're like what you're communicating and how you're feeling, I'm understanding. And I've realized in this moment that I don't understand, and I haven't been understanding that. And I'm triggered by that. That was an exit play not an exit play, but an exit strategy, a calming strategy. But what it did to me is it triggered and activated me when that would come up. So the only reason why I even bring all of this up is it's important to understand that your significant, your spouse may not be understanding you as clearly as you think they do.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
And it's interesting to, like, I should have said that to you a long time ago, to say, when you
Probably would have helped.
when you say that, this is what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a common not a strategy, but a process when you're having conversations and conflict, is to repeat back, this is what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's very helpful, especially in a moment like this, where, and then you throw fatigue on top of that, and then it's just even worse, because in a situation like ours where you're a verbal processor, I'm an internal processor.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to talk, yet there comes a point where you need to stop talking because you need to really process. And then I've moved from now internal to now external processing. And then if you're not on the right, like, you absolutely need to take a break. Take it a step further. Even when I hear we need to take a timeout,
that can even be a trigger.
That can be a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, oh, okay, so you think that.
So you need a break from me to be able to gather your thoughts because you can't think fast enough. Okay.
Yeah. So it's so, again, it is so vital in communicating that in a loving, compassionate,
mm-hmm.
graceful way, to communicate what you're hearing, as well as communicating in a way like of what you're saying, doing it in a way that can be received well.
Right. And one of the interesting things is that leads us kind of into our next conversation point is different conversation and communication styles. Yeah. And there's actually 4, and you touched on 2 of them. One is the processor. So they need to talk about things immediately to understand.
So the verbal processor, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So they need to talk about things immediately to understand their emotions. So it's, I'm going to be talking about it, and as I'm talking about it, I'm going to start understanding them more. So then we also have the internal processor, which needs time to think before responding.
Yep, that's me.
Then we also have the problem solver that wants to fix the issue quickly and move forward.
So
and
now I have 2.
Yeah. And then we have the harmonizer who wants to avoid conflict and maintain peace. And so it's interesting because I think that you find yourself into, and I find myself into, as the processor and the harmonizer.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And your internal processor and the problem solver. So it's really interesting because it's like everyone processes things differently.
Everybody does.
And oftentimes they clash in the way that you are processing things, but it doesn't mean that any of them are wrong.
That's correct. That's right.
And understanding how each other processes conflict and even just like processes their emotions and feelings, I think is so crucial in having and building a healthy foundation for a marriage, because you're going to learn, like, oh, when I say I'm confused and I need a break, it doesn't mean that it's like I actually need a break from us or from anything. It's like I actually need time to gather my thoughts and piece them together in a way that's not hurtful, that's actually thoughtful and methodical, because a lot of the times I get so jumbled and there's things, we've talked in our other podcasts before about like first draft, second draft, and
final,
all of these things, to where I tend to spew off something that maybe I could have a slight feeling in, but the way I communicate it is that this is how I feel, but it could be a temporary feeling in that moment.
Because you're in process. You're in process of gathering that.
Yeah, but the way that I communicate it is this is
it.
how I feel.
Right.
And I'm not saying that this is how I feel like for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
This is how I feel.
Right.
Period. And so it's just really interesting. So I think that one of the healthiest things that we can do is kind of give each other like that space, and in knowing our communication style. So one of the questions that I would encourage our listeners to do is ask your spouse, which communication style do you
great question.
think they have?
Yep.
And
so
then,
again, it's verbal processor, internal processor, harmonizer, or fixer.
problem solver.
Problem solver.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so those are the four. And then it's like, you know, we can really start identifying, well, what does that mean? And how does that manifest itself when you are talking about communication fatigue? So if you're a fixer and you're never able to fix it, that's probably going to lead to communication fatigue, because you're going to be constantly throwing out the ideas and you're never going to arrive at that.
But
place.
Also think it on the other side of the fixer is they're thinking, I'm helping. I
hate it.
No, I know.
So
100% you do. No, I know you do. But they're thinking I'm helping.
Yeah.
Because you got to look at both sides too, where being received, sure, like there's all this stuff and it's like, oh my gosh, will you just listen to what I'm saying as opposed to trying to fix it?
Yeah.
And then she's just, oh, hey, look at me. I'm just like, boom, boom, boom. I got this.
So this is so good, because I'm going to totally jump in for a second, because one of the clarifying questions that is so helpful that you can ask is, do you want comfort or are you seeking solutions right now? And because a lot of the times I'm going to speak generally for women, because I do believe that we tend to just want to talk and just share our feelings and emotions and feel as though it's like we're being heard, that our feelings are like, they may not be right or perfect, but that they're understood and not a solution. So that's going to lead to being comforted and feeling safe.
Yeah.
And instead of feeling as though it's like someone's trying to fix you or tell you that your feelings or emotions are wrong. So asking those clarifying questions are always so good when one person is kind of feeling like stirred up and the other person is trying to just like come in and listen and be a support. I think that that's like such a great question. Like, are you looking for a solution or are you looking for comfort right now?
Or even like, definitely avoid questions like, why are you like this?
Ew.
Like, what?
I just threw up a little bit in my mouth.
Like, why are you like this? And then turning that maybe into what do you need right now to feel understood? Like that's a great way to like, because that's going to identify you're different than me, because usually that's the case sometimes. But also understanding what do you need so that I can understand. I want to understand. And so we're communicating to our significant other that I want to understand your feelings. I want to identify and be there with them, but I need help to understand what you need.
Yeah, that's super good. So just again, the key to alleviating so many problems within relationship conflict is communication.
All about communication.
It's like, just talk to me.
We've talked about, no, we haven't. This is totally fake. But the podcast should be communication, marriage.
Imperfectly communicating.
Yeah, which would absolutely be true. 100%. Like, my goodness.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like the hidden roots of communication fatigue. So it's so many times it's less about like words and about feeling emotionally unsafe or misunderstood. I think is the root of so much of communication fatigue. So it's really when you're stepping back and it's like you're able to actually like think about it, like, okay, what was I feeling in that moment? Because a lot of the times our emotions are so high when we're feeling emotional fatigue that we don't actually know that we could be feeling judged. We could be feeling corrected. We can be feeling dismissed, unheard, or a combination of all of them, or like, I mean, that there's just so many things that you can be feeling in a sense that you stop wanting to communicate because you're feeling that communication fatigue.
It's interesting how you put that, because that would almost mean that communication fatigue only rarely comes from talking too much. It actually comes from feeling unsafe.
Yeah, I guess that's exactly what I'm communicating.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about that, like,
But I think it can go both ways. But again, what we were talking about in the beginning was that a lot of the times you talk about the same thing over and over and over again because the root issue is that you're feeling judged, misunderstood, not heard, like not feeling
absolutely.
safe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that's why you have to keep on talking about it, because you are feeling those ways.
Because you're not getting what you need in the original conversation,
Yeah.
or you haven't reached a goal, or you whatever. And it could be the other side. Maybe you're still searching for something, and yet I am feeling judged if I'm too vulnerable. I feel like maybe you're going to look at me differently, or I feel, and so when I hold those things back, you still need the conversation because we haven't achieved anything yet. And it's really, I'm fatigued because I have to manage my emotion, and I'm having to do emotional exercise, but it has nothing to do with the communication. It had everything to do with feeling unsafe. Wow.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting because it can
Jeez.
present itself like through interrupting, like defensiveness.
Both of those checked.
Trying to prove a point instead of listening.
Check.
And then I don't think either one of us really do this, but bringing up old arguments.
Oh yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah, I don't feel like either one of us do that.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that we can both be interrupters. We can definitely put on our defensive pants, and we can try to prove a point instead of listening. And so
guilty.
Yeah. So really, just a few tips to help kind of work that out is slow down the conversation. I think especially me, this is huge for me because I have a lot of words and I think really fast.
You do.
And I can process things. Like you say something, I have a response. And really slowing down and being able to be slower with the words, I think does help communicate something different.
Yes. But I'm thinking, okay, so as a verbal processor, you talking helps you process. Does slowing down affect your ability to be able to process because you're not verbally talking about it? Or are you saying you're going to slow down your speech?
Slowing down the speech
to
where the words actually form more thoughtful sentences instead of just spewing out ideas. It's actually helping me to channel like a deeper thought and emotional, like this is a perfect example is when I was doing a lot of life coaching and health coaching. One of the things was to listen, to not respond, and to slow down your words. And I'll never forget this. I remember when we were pastoring our church, I had been doing coaching for a while and I hadn't preached in a while. And I did a message and I was a lot slower and thoughtful on my words. And I will never forget, someone came up to me afterwards and they were like, that was such a good message. They're like, we can really tell that like your delivery was much more like it was like I can't remember their
Controlled or intentional or
it was more thoughtful and more like it was more even more thought provoking. It was like that was the feeling that they were like giving, because what it was is that I had been coaching for so long that it had helped me to slow down and be able to put more thoughtful words to my sentences instead of just spewing out thoughts.
No, that's
because I have lots of thoughts.
You do have lots of
so
thoughts.
Slowing down conversation is really like key. And then using the I feel language instead of the accusations. I feel like we do that pretty well. We try to really not accuse. I think early on in our marriage, we did a lot of accusing, or like, well, you did this. And you know, I feel like we did. It was probably more me than like I would accuse you. But I feel like we've really worked on that. And now I can say,
because it sounds different. Like today, when you say it today, like it just sounds like you always, when you like, it's very, I know we do use a lot of we and feel and not non-accusatory.
Yeah, because it's really communicating the feeling and the emotion behind it instead of the like me pointing out your actions.
Right. No, that's very true.
Yeah. So I think that's really key. And just remember that communication matters more than being right. So again, it's all based on communication, and those things are so valid and so key.
Well, I was also going to add, thinking of things like, and these are the things that kind of matter to me, and maybe people like me and my personality is like, thinking about your tone of voice, how you're communicating. You know, tone of voice makes a definite difference. Your facial expression, you know,
yes,
you know how a simple a gesture in your face can be like, what you just said doesn't match what your face just said, right? You know, it's just
and I think for us, we're both very expressive people, so I think that's probably where it's unfortunate, because our faces read a lot differently than I think sometimes our words.
Absolutely. And then you have like thinking about body posture. What is your body communicating? And then what you just mentioned is just the listening without interrupting. And usually interruption means that you're only listening to answer. And so I just wanted to add those to what you were talking about, because those things build safety. That builds safety in communication. And those, as it sounds like a long list, but once it becomes who you are and how you communicate, it becomes natural that you're wanting to show yourself this way. You're being very intentional about the words that you're using and communicating. That's thoughtful words, you know, for somebody like you that you know, kind of not spews, but is quick to talk. And then also on the other side of it, presenting an environment that is welcoming as opposed to an aggressive stance or something like that.
Something that's really interesting about this, when we're talking about rebuilding the energy for communication, these are such huge tips that are not just for marriage and for relationships. This can translate really well into the workplace.
Absolutely.
Like making sure that it's like, what is your nonverbals saying? Like, how is your body posture? Like, these are just good communication tools to have in your back pocket, especially when you feel like your blood pressure is rising and that you're having either that communication fatigue, the conversation's getting a little bit more heated, doing all of these kind of check-ins. Because really what we're doing is we're wanting to communicate and connect and reconnect on an emotional level with the other person that's on the receiving line of our communication. We're wanting to connect and reconnect and rebuild once we've entered into that either communication fatigue or that conflict. And sometimes what we can do is we can, you know, like have a shared experience, laugh together, like take a rest, like go and recharge, come together for a date night. Like these are all things that are going to help refuel healthy conversation. And then also like take a 24-hour pause from any conversation that you're having. Go on a walk together to discuss the things, get your body moving together as you talk. I remember there was one time, oh my gosh, we were in the middle of like the most like heated conversation and you were like, go get your shoes on. We're going on a walk. And I was like, F you. I was like,
I specifically remember that day.
Angry that how dare you in the middle of this conflict, you're telling me to go put my shoes on and we're going to go on a walk. I was like, I hate you right now. And I was so mad and we totally did it. And I have to say that at the end, we were sitting in the driveway and I like literally sitting in the driveway and I was like, okay, I guess the walk was a good idea because what it did is it kind of got my body like unstuck from holding all of that like ick in. And so that was really great.
It was a winning scenario.
It really was.
It was a great strategy.
But we can also start the conversations with appreciation first. And then again, we're always going to say get curious instead of defensive. So get curious on what's actually going on.
And also remember, and this is one that you've told me several times, and sometimes I have to come back around to it and remind myself that you're not against me.
Right.
You want what's best for me. And even in the midst of, a tough conversation or argument, that still remains the same. Now, I'm not going to say that there hasn't been, for other people, maybe that it wasn't quite like that. But for the most part, that's where you need to start, is that the one that you've said yes to and the one that you love and the one that loves you, they want to be on your side. Mm-hmm. And so they're not against you. And so don't approach it as if, and I'm telling this to myself, don't approach it as if you have to fight to be right and fight to win, because this is not your enemy.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yep. Do you have anything else that you really want to touch on before we wrap it up?
No. The reality is that communication fatigue is a real thing that I would say every relationship experiences. And it's not anything that needs to be thought of as something that's wrong. It's simply something to know that could present itself. And so when you're aware of that and you start to understand the signals of, there's something, I'm short, she's short, interrupting a lot. It's not you, it's just simply, hey, let's take a break because we are getting fatigued. We want to win together, and for some reason we don't want to win together right now. So that's weird. Mm-hmm. And just knowing that this is a thing and it happens.
Yeah. And like always, go to our blog, check out our latest blog post because we usually blog about our episodes. Yeah. And there's always additional tips or we point out some of the things that we went through in this episode. So make sure to do that. And remember that great marriages aren't built on perfect communication. They're built on two people who keep choosing to understand each other, even when the conversations get hard. So that's all we got. And make sure to keep communicating. Take those breaks. It's okay. This is healthy. This is all part of growing and maturing together because no marriage is perfect.
Go love each other.
Check out our socials and comment with any questions that you may have. All right. We love you guys. Thank you again.
See you next time.